I'm Joni Robinson. We're going to be talking this morning around vendor purchasing. And yeah, this is the Department of Transportation, and those are just some pictures of the different modes that are within the department. And so we'll get started. We are going to be talking this morning about the rules of state procurement. We're going to talk about registering with the state. What is electronic vendor portal, or EVP as it's commonly called? We're going to talk about some purchasing methods as well as seeking competition, soliciting methods, evaluations methods, the award processing, and contract monitoring. So we're also going to cover rules and laws. What's the difference between the two as it pertains to purchasing with the state? What's considered a good and what's considered a service? We're going to talk about what do you mean when you say delegation, and what about policy? And we're also going to talk about the different types of contracts. So I wanted to get started by just talking about the purchasing hierarchy within the state. So the highest level are the general statutes, which are the laws that governs how we do purchasing in the state. And then the next level is the administrative code, which really sets rules in place about how we're going to enact the laws that was put in place under the general statutes. Then the next level is the procurement, North Carolina Procurement Manual. And this is really policy and identifies the course of action that the agencies will use in following the rules. So how are you going to follow the rules? And then we have the agency purchasing manual, which the North Carolina Procurement Manual is really the hierarchy, and is based out of the Department of Administration Division of Purchase and Contracts for non-IT goods, for all goods and services that are non-IT bought under General Statute 143. They're covered in the Purchasing Contracts Procurement Manual, and then which is the law for all the agencies across the state. And then at the bottom of the page there, you see the agency purchasing manual, in which each agency should have their own purchasing manual, which should correlate with all those items that you see on top. So I can't have anything in the Department of Transportation purchasing manual that contradicts any of the laws, the rules, or what Department Division of Purchase and Contract have in their procurement manual. So it all should be synced. It's going to be specific to, for me, it will be specific to NCDOT, because that's where we are. If it was at Department of Public Safety, they may look a little different, but they all are going to be covering what those top three items have. There will be no contradiction there. I also added the budget manual there, simply because we also use that as guidelines to state agencies and universities regarding expenses and reimbursements for travel and things of that nature. And that kind of sometimes falls under the purchasing umbrella as well. Paula, thank you. And then the purchasing authority, how it's governed, kind of mentioned it lightly previously, but on the left-hand side, you see purchasing contracts. That's really the Department of Administration, so DOA. They have what is a division of purchasing contracts, is the official name, and this is for all goods and services that are non-IT. And these are the general statutes that covers that you can find in Chapter 143, Article 3. And then the rules, the administrative code, which are the rules around how you're going to do that, is listed in Title 1, Chapter 5. And then that is for non-IT. For all IT purchases, they also have a statewide procurement office, which covers for the agencies across the state as well, but they are specific to IT, and they have for goods and services, and their general statutes is 147, and also you can find their administrative code in Title 9 in Chapter 6. I also added the state construction there. Obviously, that covers anything that is renovation or alteration to any physical property that belongs to the state. and they have their own separate rules. So for construction, you can find the laws on the general statute in chapters 116, 143, and 153. And they also have a state construction manual that identifies how they're going to go through their procurement process on the construction side. Generally, the procurement agencies across the state use those first two, the ones that are highlighted in the pink or circled in the pink. They use these two governing bodies to make their purchases, whether it's IT or non-IT. Paula? So what opportunities are there to work with the state? So we are identifying here that there are several. There are 28 executive state agencies. There are 58 community colleges, 16 public universities, over 2,500 public and charter schools. We have 100 counties in the state and over 500 municipalities. So there's a huge amount of opportunity for you to do business with the state. Carla? So this is just a list of the state agencies and the support organization for the state. And what I've just pointed out here, if you look in that right-hand corner column, you will see it says cabinet. And for all those agencies that are listed as cabinet agency, those the heads of those agencies are appointed by the governor, right? And right below that, you will see the agencies that are listed as council of state is what they're called. And these agencies, these heads of these agencies are elected officials. So when you go to the ballot and you choose who you want, those are the council of state. And then lastly, below there are those support agencies that helps the state. Paula? So let's talk about need identification. So how is need identified? And really, so what the agency answered the questions, there's a list of questions that the agency is answering when they're trying to identify what the need is. So for my group, my team, my staff, when we get something, the end user should have, what are you buying, right? How much does it cost? And does the division have the funding, right? Is the funding in place to pay for? How do I buy it? And what documentation is needed to make the purchase? And then when it gets to my team, right, we're going to be looking at some of the same things in terms of what are you trying to buy and how much does it cost, right? Are you purchasing a good? Are you purchasing a service? What is the delegation? Is it over our delegation or is it under? And then also we have to look at, is it something that's covered under the mandated resources, or are we going to do an open market or a competitive process to make this purchase? Paula? So goods versus services, what's the difference? So goods are all commodities, something that's tangible that you can actually see or touch. And for those, there's a 1.75% charge for goods, but it's only on the goods. And then on the other side, if it's we have services, which is something that's intangible, you really probably can't touch it, right? And it's a task that's performed by an individual or company that has specialized knowledge, has some expertise, some experience doing it. You see some example there, the guy that's power washing. So, he's providing a service and not a good, right? We're paying him to do a piece of work because of his specialized experience and his expertise in getting that done. Paula? So agency delegation. So each state agency, the community college, as well as the universities have a set amount of money. A general purchasing limit is what it is, which the state procurement officer, which is a member of the Division of Purchase and Contract, approves. He can either raise it or decrease it. If it's a he currently, but sometimes it's a she. But the person in the role today is David O'Neill. And so David has the authority to either raise or decrease just based upon the performance of the agency, the community college, or the university in terms of following the general statutes and administrative codes that are there for purchasing. For all purchases that are under the delegation that are processed and executed by the agency, right? So that means that for most of the agencies, it's $50,000. So if NCDOT, my team is purchasing something that is, whether it's a good or service, and it's under $50,000, right? We will process the whole thing awarded right here inside of NCDOT without having to anyone else take a look at it, right? So that, but if it's over, right, then it must be approved by, for non-IT items, goods or services, it has to be approved by the Division of Purchasing Contracts, right, or PNC, or it has to be, if it's an IT purchase, it has to be approved by the Department of Information Technology and their statewide IT procurement office. So that means that if NCDOT is making a purchase of good or service that's over $50,000, there are some exceptions because we have what we call delegations, and so we have special delegations from PNC that will allow DOT not to have send certain items that we purchase over there. Why? Because they're specific to NCDOT, right? No other agency uses it. We've been doing this for a while. We know what we're doing, right? And we generally get it right. So PNC have established, we have asked and they agreed that we can handle those, even the over $50,000 ones, so they don't see those. But for instance, like we buy asphalt and aggregate, those things that you see on the side of the on the road when they're doing construction, how we lay our roads. Those are specific to NCDOT. No other agency is going to be buying that, right? And so we don't send those over there, even though they are well over $50,000. They're in the millions of dollars that we do contracts for those. But because of the specialty is what we do, and we've shown that we can do that and follow the rules, then we don't have to send those. But every other thing, outside of those that we have that delegation for, if it's over $50,000, that my team put together the purchase, the solicitation document, we have to send it over to PNC, let them take a look at it, right, before before we award it, right? And what they're looking for is just to make sure that we follow those rules that are in the administrative codes, the rules, and that we haven't violated any of the general statutes that covers the purchase. They're going to take a look at that and that we've followed our processes. And then they're going to send it back and say, okay, you're good, go ahead and award it. So, and that takes time, kind of adds to the process a little bit in terms of, your ability to awarded and timely. So we're very, we build that time into the process because that's something that we are required to do. But that's what it means when you talk about delegation. It's really talking about the limit that the agency or the university or community college can purchase without having to have additional review and approval from the higher hierarchy, either Division of Purchase and Contracts for non-IT goods or the statewide IT procurement office for IT goods. Okay, Colin, sorry. It seems like I went on about that one. And then here, this is an example of a purchasing policy. And because I am NCDOT, this represents NCDOT. And so it may look a slightly different if with some of the other agencies, but generally, the amounts might be a little different for anything that is below $50,000, but anything over is generally probably about the same. So here at NCDOT, if it's a purchase that's less than $10,000, we kind of call that a micro purchase, whether it's a good or not a service. And we really tell our business units, right, rail, ferry, aviation, or the divisions. We have 14 divisions across the state of North Carolina. We tell them to go ahead and make those purchases using your P card, the procurement cost, like a credit card, right? And they can go ahead and make those. If it is $10,000 and $10,000 up to $25,000, we consider that to be a small purchase. And we do ask for a quote from a vendor. If it is because we do have some services that falls in that small purchase category, we will use our RFQ or our IFB, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later in a minute, for those services. And the reason why we do that, because we want to invoke the state's terms and conditions is necessary, particularly for our janitorial contracts. There are some laws and like HIPAA kinds of requirements. There are some, the vacuum cleaner has to be a certain kind. Certain of the solutions that they use, they have certain legal requirements on those as well. So we need to make sure that the vendor that we're contracting for those services, that they understand that and that they sign to agree to do that. So for those type of things, even though it's considered a small purchase, we do use our documentation because again, we want to make sure we include the state's terms and conditions and we're clear on what the requirements are for those in order to be a vendor for that area. And then for anything that's $25,000 $1 and up to $50,000, we really call that an informal purchase. But it's goods or service, competition is required, right? That means that we want to look at more than one vendor, but we are not going to advertise it. It will not be posted on EVP. We also post on NC Connect at NCDOT. So it would be competed, but it would not be advertised. And so this is really where we encourage you to make sure that you are registered in EVP, that you are that your commodity, your goods and services that you want to provide to the state, that is accurate and that is current. Because when we are in this range, this where competition is required, but we don't have to advertise it, then we are looking for vendors that provide the goods or services that we are procuring at that time, and be able to send out quotes to them to get them back, right? We're going to email it to you, you fill it out, send it back to us, and then we are going to go with probably low cost spec in this category. Again, we're going to get 3 quotes here. If it's a service, it depending upon what it is, we may use something other than an RFQ. We use that IFB, or in some cases, maybe an RFP. But then if it's $50,000 or up is what we really call a formal purchase, whether it's goods or service, competition is required. And there is advertisement requirement as well. We also are going to use our documents because we want to make sure that the vendor agrees to North Carolina terms and conditions. We are most likely going to advertise it on the open market. There are some instances, there are not that many, but there does exist an opportunity sometimes to have a waiver, which means that we are not going to compete it, but it have to meet certain criteria. And you can reach out to me and I can tell you what they are, but it is a list of about 12 conditions, and you have to meet, at least you, the end user, have to meet, or the purchase itself have to meet one of those conditions in order to waive. It's a waiver of competition. It means that we're not going to advertise it. We can only get it from a certain source, or we can only, maybe it is because that vendor is the only authorized dealer for that particular good or service in this region. Sometimes the business vendors or companies stipulate who can sell their product, right, and who can sell their product in North Carolina, or who can or even sometimes there is a justifiable reason for why you want to buy a particular brand. So if that's the case, then we're going to waive competition on any other brand. We're only looking for this specific brand. But because I believe that competition is the cornerstone of public procurement, so we need to do everything we can to make sure that we're competing and that we're giving vendors every opportunity to get the contract. So I require my staff that before any waiver is agreed, I have to see it, right? I have to approve it. I'm the only one. I don't care if it's for $1,000, right? If it's for $500, if it's a waiver of competition of any sort, I require my staff to run it by me. So that is how important it is. I think to make sure that we give every opportunity for our vendors to be able to do business with the state and not, circumvent that by having a waiver in place. And so even if it's a waiver, I'm looking at why is it waived? You know, based on what you say you have to have this certain brand, but why? You know, why does that make sense? So they have to convince me that it makes business sense and that we have no other option but to do it that way. So that's what, and also for contract terms, it's a standard 3 years. Generally, they say 1 year with 2 1-year renewable options, is what most contracts would say. If it is a contract that we want to do over 3 years, then we are required to get the state purchasing officer approval, which is David O'Neill currently, and also for contracts that are estimated to be over $1 million. We do have both NCDOT legal folks take a look at it, and obviously it's over the 50,000. So in some cases it will go over to PNC, and they'll have their legal take a look at it too. And this is before posting and before award. Paula. Now I want to talk about contracts, the different types of contracts that are out there. And so the standard term contract is established for the use of all agencies, and unless they're exempted by statute or rule. The basic definition of a term contract, really, it is a binding agreement between the purchaser or the state, in this case, the state of North Carolina, and the vendor to buy and sell certain commodities, printing or services at certain prices and under stipulated terms and conditions, right? And for North Carolina, these state term contracts are can be either mandatory or convenience. And they would say that on the contract if you go out there to PNC website, because the Division of Purchase and Contracts put all state term contracts in place for the state. So they are the contract administrators. So they are housed on PNC's website, and you can go out there and take a look at all the ones that are in place. If you click on one of the things that's going to tell you at the top of the contract is whether or not it's mandatory or convenience. If it says mandatory, then that means that the state agencies and community colleges and universities, unless they have some special exemption, they have to use that contract if they're buying one of the items or, you know, any of the items that are covered by that contract. So it's mandatory for the state agencies to use it. If it says convenience, that means that it's in place. If you want to use it, you can, agency, but you don't have to. If you want to compete it, if you want to do something different, you can do that. You don't have to use this contract. But that's only if it says convenience. Again, if it says mandatory, then we are required to buy that item or that contract, that service using that contract. And then we have agency-specific term contracts, which is kind of the same thing, except for it's specific to the agency. For instance, I talked about NCDOT. One of the things that, you know, we buy quite a bit of is salt, right? We do the brine. We do, there are certain things that's specific to NCDOT that other agencies probably are not going to be buying. And so it would make sense in some cases for us to have agency-specific contract for those items. Not just that, but what if there are several business units within the agency that use the same good or service, need the same service, then it makes sense to put a agency contract in place that covers that. Then all of the different business units or divisions can use that contract, and you won't have to go out each and every time and do a procurement, because that really takes time and you know, it takes work to procure something. So if you put something in place, we do that. But those contracts are indefinite quantity. That means that we'll put a contract in place, get vendors on it, but we're not guaranteeing a specific quantity is going to be bought off of that contract, right? But it's always better to be on the contract than not be on it if there's a contract in place. And generally, it says the award is based on historical data, and that really talks about the need. We're gonna take a look at the need for the contract to be in place, and you know, the performance of the contract previously historically. Again, these are standard 3-year contracts as well. Generally, it would say, as I stated before, 1 year with 2 year. With 2 1-year renewable options on it. if it's in longer than 3 years, we have to get division and purchasing contracts for non-IT and DIT for IT items to have a contract in place over 3 years. Color? And then we want to talk about service contracts, contractual services. That's where we kind of talked about a little bit in terms of we talked about service. This is where you have an independent vendor who performs a work or a task, right? That requires that specialized knowledge or skills that we talked about. And there's some examples that's listed there, like janitorial, landscaping. Remember, we saw the guy doing the power washing. And then we have consultant service contracts, and the difference is that for the consultant, they're gonna provide you with a review, some counsel. They're gonna investigate how to solve a problem. They're gonna give you some advice at the end of it, or they're gonna give you a review, or they're gonna give you a report. So they're not gonna actually do anything in terms of solving the problem. They're gonna advise you. You're gonna consult with them around how to get the solution that you are seeking. For consultant services contracts, they have to be approved by the governor's office. That's a seamless you won't see, if you are in that category, you would not see that where it's just another step in the process of getting approval. What we would do is NCDOT or any agency, when we're working with the Department of for non-IT goods, the Division of Purchasing Contracts, when we send it over to them, one of the things that that office would do prior to sending it back to us saying, okay, is that they will get it over to the appropriate person in the governor's office to get it reviewed and approved, get it back to them, then they will send it to us. So we won't see that in terms of that, but we know that when we get it back, that process has already happened because that is part of the process. Paula? And this is Department of Information Technology. Obviously, these are for IT purchases. We stated earlier, there are general statutes that cover that, and those are some of the things that are bought in our IT world, right? Hardware, software. We do database subscriptions, license agreements. We do data, data management agreement, and then the statewide IT procurement office approves all technologies, that's over the agency delegation. Remember, we said delegation is the limit, the total amount that the agency can spend or purchase without having to get the approval authority to take a look at it as well. So this is the same thing for IT as it is for non-IT. They put state term contracts in place as well for IT items, and they also do security reviews, the different types of security reviews that you see there. We talked a little bit about waivers of competition. As I stated, it's the purchase or the rental or lease of goods and services by means other than a competitive bid, right? And those are a couple of examples that are most commonly used when waiver is in place. Yeah, like they're saying it's a sole source. Like I can't get it from any other place. I have to get it from this place, right? They're the only one that have this. It's brand specific. I gotta have this specific name brand, right? Nothing else will work. It's an emergency, right? That means that life or intimate property damage is at risk, right? So we don't have time to do a procurement process. We need to get this done and get it done right now, quickly. Standardization, that is talking about, for instance, if I've already outfitted my office and I've used all Dell computer products, right, to do that, then if I'm gonna outfit another office, I add one more office into my suite, and then I want to make it to look the same as the rest of them, then I want my justification is that I want to standardize it along with all the other offices that we have already in place, and it's an ongoing. And then the next one is ongoing tasks or job or task, and that means that I'm still working on this project is ongoing. We've had this approved previously. We're still not finished. We need to buy some more, so we're going to add to the same thing. So this is the ongoing job or task, and this is authorized. That tells you what the administrative code number is that speaks specifically to waivers of competition. Caller. Are there any questions?
I do have a question in the chat, and that
Okay.
question is, do we have to wait until a need comes up, or can we reach out to DOA and introduce our company and the services we provide? And if so, what department or person do we need to reach out to?
So, I would not reach out to, great question, but I would not reach out to the Division of Purchase and Contracts, because the Division of Purchase and Contract doesn't do any purchasing itself. It reviews the other agencies' work and make sure that they are following the rules, the laws, the administrative codes. That's what PNC does, right? Same thing with statewide IT procurement. PNC does it for non-IT. Statewide IT procurement office does it for IT. Neither one of those agencies or offices actually purchase anything themselves. They're going to review agencies like mine's work to make sure that we follow the rules. So if I was going to be in touch with anyone, then I would be specifically to those agencies that you want to do business with. And so the question is, who would be a good contact for that? Most of the agencies now have what we call a vendor liaison person, and Carla can provide, for NCDOT, the procurement office, that is Nicole Giammi. And so we can provide her name or contact information. So that'll be a good segue into NCDOT, and she can get you the information you need and the contact information for the end users. Because again, our purchasing office, that's what we do, is purchasing. So we are purchasing for the other business units and divisions within NCDOT, right? So we're not going to actually do anything with asphalt, right? Or aggregate, or we're not going to do anything with an airplane or, a ferry boat, right? So we're buying it for those different divisions. So the people in those divisions, our job is, we're kind of like the PNC inside of the agency. We're making sure that we follow the statutes, the laws, and administrative codes that governs how state agencies are going to do purchasing. But we are purchasing on the behalf of an end user within the agency. So someone inside of DOT have to come to my department and say, hey, Joni, we want to purchase this, right? And then we're going to work with them to get information we need from them, because they're the subject matter experts. My folks are expert at purchasing. They're not experts at asphalt, right? Or how to build a road, or those kinds of things. So we're going to utilize their specialty, their knowledge, to make sure we buy the right thing, what they're looking for, and then we get it to them when they need it. So to answer your questions, I would reach out to the agency, and I would reach out to the first person that comes to mind for me would be the vendor liaison person. And again, for NCDOT, Carla can provide that. And I'm pretty sure, Carla, that the hub office can also provide the contact, the liaison contact for the different agencies that have them in place.
All right. Next question, are there set-asides, and does it require a specific certification?
So these are General Statute 143s, and we do not have set-asides. So what I think you may be referring to is purchases that are done at least at NCDOT. They're done under General Statute 136, and they are construction related. Today we're talking about General Statute 143, and these are goods and services. So there are no set-asides on the 143 side.
Right. The next question, under the IT slide, does that include education training? And that question is from Deborah Lee, and I'm thinking she's talking about the types of purchasing they may do. She's wondering if it includes education and training.
I know that they have someone on the statewide IT procurement staff that that handles making sure you understand, what you need to do when you're buying IT purchases. So I'm not sure whether they actually do a class like this. So I'm not sure about that. We could try to find that out and provide that information to call and try to get it back out to you. But I'm not sure that they they do that. But I do know that they have someone, just like any other office, right? You could call them and they're going to help you as much as they can. They do have someone that that is a trainer by job description, right? That is what she does. So I know that they can provide assistance, but I don't know that they do this type of how to do business with the state from the IT perspective. If that's your question, I'm not sure.
All right, that was our last question. If we want to move on
Okay.
to the next module.
Thank you. And
You're
so
welcome.
we are going to switch gears a little bit here and move into the process that you need to follow if you want to do business with the state. Kind of get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of it. So here we're going to talk about the electronic vendor portal, just some basics around that, how to register and manage your EVP account. Paula. So the North Carolina Electronic Vendor Portal, or EVP, as it's commonly called, is a free registration, right? It's an automated business opportunity notification system, right? If you you identify the commodity codes that you want to do, you want to offer in terms of goods and services to the state. So when my office, other offices, universities, community colleges post solicitations for the commodity codes that you identified or related to, then you will get an automatic notification to say, hey, someone posted, there's an opportunity out there. You want to go out there and take a look at it, right? So it offers that as it also it's a place where you can keep your vendor information updated, and it's a one-stop registration for e-procurement with the state. Colin? So the benefits we think of the EVP system is that it consolidates a lot of 3 different applications that we were using previously into a single cloud-based system, and it allows for great efficiency and between the vendors, you and the state procurement professionals, the procurement offices across the state. For you, the vendor, it simplifies the access. It streamlines the system where you can register to do business with the state it's a feature of the old EVP platform. You can view and submit bid opportunities on the state entity, so you can both look at them and submit your bid through that same system, and you can register for the North Carolina Small Business Enterprise or the historically underutilized business certifications there. And again, once the bids have been opened, you can go back and view the bid tabulations, and once awarded, you can also go back and see the award information for each bid that was posted there. We think that the new platform makes it easier also for the purchasers in the different state agencies to be able to find qualified vendors. So it's important that your information is current, up to date, and that you really identify only those commodities that is what you want to use, right? So if someone in my team is looking for, we're in that small dollar item, something less than $50,000, and we're looking through the portal, the directory to find a vendor, a hub vendor that can provide that service or that good, right? If your business identify all commodity codes, then we have no idea which one you really can do. And it is unlikely that you can do all of them. So it's not of service to you to do that. I would make sure that I have identified those commodities that are truly capable, able, and ready to provide their service for the state, right? It's really important. Caller? So electronic vendor portal, some kind of basics to take away from this slide, I think, are the fact that it's a single cloud-based application. It provides a single point of access for North Carolina, and there's that 1.75% fee, but it's only for goods, right? If you do a service contract on General Statute 143, there isn't a fee. If you do provide a good, there is that 1.75% fee. Paula? So the registration, you will see, obviously you need an internet access. You need to have your federal ID or your EIN number, your employer identification number, and obviously you need a valid email address as well. Carla's going to provide this slide deck to you. So there's the link there for registration and of job aid. So if you have some questions, you can go to that link and be able to answer. There's also contact information there for the help desk. What I will say and just kind of reiterate for you is that, again, it's free. And when you register, it'll notify you when there are business opportunities. So this is a great way. It's a great way to be able to know what work is available with the state. I would caution that for you to remember that you need to make sure you keep your information updated, right? For contact reasons. So when we're looking, again, when we're looking to be able to contact personally vendors, we're looking at this information and it needs to be updated, right? And current. Carla, thank you. So again, there's the link for managing your account. If we can go back one, Carla, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Also, on this, at this managing account, it provides directions on how you could change your password and how you can update your profile information. You can add and delete contact information there. If you need to update your name, you can do that as well, or edit or add a location. So that's what you can do in the managing your accounts portion. Paula. Some frequently asked questions with regard to EVP. So we, why am I required to pay this 1.75% for goods? It's only for goods. And we think that the fee, it offsets the expense of having electronic process, right? Convenience isn't free. Convenience isn't free. Allows the state to conduct business electronically, which is, again, an asset to both the state and to the vendor. And vendors, you are able to market your business with state agencies, all across the state in one spot. So we think that that 1.75% fee for only on goods is justifiable. How does my company benefit? Again, we think it does cost savings in terms of processing and marketing because you got one-stop space right here. It also increased the accuracy and consistency throughout the delivery process. It's a single point of contact for the government. You go to one place, you get to see all across all the agencies, university, and community colleges that post, that is there, right? You can go to one place and see that. And again, it increased your access to the North Carolina government markets that's out there. Paula, are there any questions?
I am checking the chat to see if we have anything. A second. One question, who would be the best contact person to learn about bidding on contracts for construction?
Well, for NCDOT, you can certainly reach out to Nicole. She's our vendor liaison, and she can get you in contact really with our
And I'd just like to
office of.
Oh, and Shay provided her information also in the chat.
Okay. Yes, hi. This is Nicole, and I also added my information there, Director Robbins. So if they'd like to reach out to me, they certainly can do so.
Perfect.
Nicole Giami. Thank you.
And this is Shay McIntyre. Just a quick add to that. There are also some resources that may be available. Again, as Nicole is the primary contact for NCDOT purchasing, there are some other resources, as Joni mentioned before, that may be specific to some other agencies. And so if that is the case for, where you're really looking to do business, then we'll put you in contact there with another resource that may be closer to where it is that you're really trying to do business. And then there are also some resources that are out in the municipalities may offer some additional training there. So we'll get you started with kind of pointing you in the right direction so that you can get the assistance that you need.
Perfect. Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Nicole.
And a common question that is continued to be asked in the chat is whether this presentation and the recording will be provided, and the answer is yes. Also, there's a question about a place to see all commodity codes. We do have a link to the commodity codes that we'll place in the chat.
Thank you.
And one question, let's see. My business is Building Back Better HR Consultant. Do you all have commodity codes that are listed for HR services and HR consultant?
I'm not personally familiar with all of the codes that are out there, but we do have personal services and consultant services codes that are out there. So I would say yes, that you will be able to find one that fits what you're looking for.
And we can place the list so that you can review at your convenience. I think that's the last question in the chat.
Okay, let's keep going. All right, so we are going to talk about mandated resources. And special provisions and HUB certification. We got the HUB experts on the line, so I'm not gonna say a whole lot about that, but definitely want to touch on that just briefly. Paula, thank you. So mandated resources, those are kind of talked about just really briefly previously. So if it's a state term contract, remember I talked about it's either going to say mandatory or convenience. If it says mandatory, then the agencies, the community colleges and universities that don't have special exemptions are required to use those. So for those mandated resources that we're procuring a good and or a service for, before we do buy that, we first got to consider, whether it's when we're looking at any purchase, before we buy, we need to first consider whether there's a mandatory state term contract in place. Correction Enterprise has a preference that's given to them by statute. We also have state and federal surplus property that's out there, and the list, as you can see it there, is this. So we need to look at these resources prior to buying anything to see if what we are procuring, the good or service that we are procuring, can be procured through either of these entities that you will see listed here. That doesn't necessarily mean that there are absolutely no other options out there. For instance, for Correction Enterprises, if NCDOT wants to buy something that Correction Enterprises provides, then when we reach out to Correction Enterprises, if they can't provide what we need when we need it, in the time frame that we need it, then they'll give us a release, right? A written authorization that we can go outside, right? We'll compete it. We'll go to a special, to a particular vendor or vendors trying to get quotes. So there is still opportunity, and so it is good for you to let the different agencies know what the good and or service that your business would like to provide, so that they can have that in instances where, even if it's a mandated resource, if we cannot get what we need when we need it from those mandated resource. Caller. And so HUB, that is the goal of HUB participation for each for the agencies is 10%. We certainly want to do more than that, but we are certainly At a minimum, we want to do 10%, and the hubs are identified in e-procurement and in EVP. So the initiative that the agencies have, particularly purchasing contracts in their solicitation documents, they've added hub language to all of the solicitation where they promote and encourage the use of hub vendors. We do a projected upcoming opportunities or a hub plan that's done as well. And we also notify when I believe now that we have the new Ariba system in place, when the postings are put up, they're also, I believe, connected to your hub website as well.
Yes, they are also posted in our portal, the hub solicitation portal on our website.
Yes. Thank you. Next one. And so the hub plan is just really, this is just an example, and it's specific to NCDOT. Again, we use the language that we promote and encourage the use of hub vendors. What we do is kind of look at the different ranges that we have there. You see, for the 25,000 or less, that's where we use our purchase cards, our P cards there. And efforts it's required that they seek a hub vendor for the initial request, right? But we need to be able to identify you. So you need to be, your contact information need to be accurate, and you need to be responsive, right? For that range of 25 to 50,000, we have a minimum of 3 quotes, right? And we ask that at least one of them be from a hub vendor. And then the 50,000 and above, that is our competitive and advertised level. And the standard hub language is added to our solicitation, in that we do try to solicit at least one hub vendor in that category as well. Paula, are there any questions about that?
In the chat, the question is, does the NC Hub certification qualify you to work with the DOT, or do you have to have a specific DOT certification?
No, you do not have to have, for goods and service under General Statute 143, you do not have to have a special DOT certification. Hub certification is what we are, we are encouraging and promoting my staff to be looking for. So again, as long as you are correctly identified, have your correct contact information there, and the goods and a service that you would like to provide, then that is what we're looking for. We're not looking in for goods and services under General Statute 143. We're not looking for any additional certifications.
And I see Shay is answering some of the questions in the chat. Thank you, Shay. There's a specific question about the right code for sanitary napkins. We provide natural products of pads and liners and want to be able to supply schools and universities. And as I said, we'll put that list of commodity codes for your convenience so that you can review and see if you can find those codes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does the NC Hub, oh, okay, I think we asked that question about whether the Hub certification qualifies you to work with DOT. And then Shay has placed the link for PNC's guidance for selecting commodity codes. So if you would check through the chat, some of your questions have been answered. And so, Joni, that was our last question in the chat, and we can move on.
Thank you. I'm sorry, needed to take a quick swallow of water. Apologize.
No problem.
So in this section, we're gonna we're going to talk about the different types of solicitation documents, the solicitation content itself, and we're also going to talk about requirements and evaluation criteria. So let's talk about solicitation planning. The usually completed at the end user level. Remember, I said we are the purchasing office, so we actually are contacted by the different divisions and or business units within NCDOT. And they're what we call the end user, right? So when we go through a procurement process, my office is going to manage the procurement process, but once we award it, then we are out of the loop, right? That's where we put the vendor with the end user, and y'all work together to meet the requirements that are in our solicitation document, but y'all will be talking directly with each other. While we're in the procurement process, the vendors will talk to my office. We're the middle guy, right? And we're between the vendor and the end user. Once we award the contract, we remove ourselves out of that process, and then the vendor and end user will talk directly with each other. So the end user, what we're looking for in the solicitation process is that they identify their need and define what that is. Again, they're the subject matter experts, and so we're looking for them to do that, right? And develop the specification, or in the case of RFPs, the scope of work that is necessary. And then we're going to get involved, right? My office is going to get involved. We're going to review that and authorize, those things, make sure it fits within, what are those laws out there that govern, what are the, what does our procurement process say? How much money are we spending? We're going to look at all of that and make sure we are going down the correct path, and making this purchase, according to the administrative code and the procurement rules that we have in place. And we're also going to prepare the solicitation document in my office, and that's either posting it or sending it directly to the vendor. So if it's a below a certain dollar amount, then we're going to be looking at not advertising. So if it says posting, we really mean advertising. We're going to put it out on EBP or at NCDOT. We also have NC Connect that we use as well. So the purchasing piece of that is really the management of making sure we're using an accurate solicitation document, that the solicitation itself is developed well, that it is a competitive, not too restrictive, which would limit the amount of competition that can happen. We are actually soliciting the bids, right? That we are competing it, and we're also going to be managing the award process, right? Did we do the evaluation based on what we said we was going to do? And is the recommendation justified based on the evaluation that was done? That is what my office is going to be lead the process in doing in the procurement of goods and services. Carla. So, vendor direct quotes. So this is for goods or services. It's an EVP tool, and it's used for purchases up to $25,000. The buyer or the purchaser is able to select from a list of registered vendors. Again, another reason why you want to make sure you are registered. Paula. So the IRQ, which is informal request for a quote, that is really, we use it for both goods and services. Generally, it's for purchases up to $50,000. The buyer, the purchaser, is able to select from a list of registered vendors. Again, important to make sure you're registered and the information is current. Contact information is current. The quote is sent directly to the vendor, right? We're going to email it to you, right? And then you can fill it out, complete it, or return it back to us via email. And you also because we're using our documents, when I say our documents, our solicitation documents, and you will agree to the terms and conditions that are listed there on the document. Paula. The RFQ, that is request for a quote. It's normally used for non-advertised procurement. So those solicitations that we're gonna process, that we do not post, we do not advertise, then we're gonna send them directly to the vendor. 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be an RFQ that you receive, a request for a quote. You will agree to the North Carolina terms and conditions. That is the main reason why we use our own documents, because we have terms and conditions attached to them, meaning they're out there, laid out clearly for you to read and understand and agree to. It can be used for seeking competition. While we can do it in a competitive process, most times it's used in a non-competitive process or advertised process. It can be faxed or emailed back. My office, I require that it be emailed back. Don't like using a fax simply because we don't have a dedicated fax. We are on the floor with some other departments. And so, while we do all have have a copier or printer on our desk, it does not have fax capabilities. And so we share a copier room with other folks on the floor. And so we can't control if you fax us something back, maybe someone picked it up accidentally and they may not know for days that, that has happened. So we would have missed the opportunity. So I asked my staff to make sure we just do emails. And the difference is with these RFQs that email to you, once you email it back, it's open immediately, right? We're not waiting for a particular day and time to do that. So that's another, I think, good thing about when we don't do advertisement. We are able to move quickly on them. We get the response back. We can go ahead and work on getting it awarded. Colin. The IFB. The invitation for bid is, that's where we are seeking formal, or let me just say, well-defined goods and services. That's what it says. We know exactly what we want. That's what we mean by well-defined. We know what we want. We know what we want it to look like. Only thing we really asking you is, when can you deliver it? Can you deliver it in the time frame that we need? And what are you going to charge us to do that? And it's typically used for purchases that are over $50,000. It can be less than that as well. There's no really limit on that. The thing that determines whether you're going to use IFB or not. One of the things is to determine whether you're going to have a competitive process, right? Whether you're going to have a competitive process. That's the first thing to determine. The bids are evaluated and awarded more cases than not on lowest cost meeting specification. Means it can do everything. Each bid came in, we're going to look at it and see, can it provide the product that we said in the specification that we want, in the time frame that we need it. So the only thing that's left is price. So who can do all those things, right? And who's going to do it at the lowest cost? And so it is posted for a minimum when we post anything, not just IFB. If it's advertised, it's posted for a minimum of 10 days. The more complex it is, then it's going to probably be posted for longer than 10 days, because you're going to need that extra time to try, to meet the requirements and to be able to, do what you need to do on your end to be able to put together a bid for us. And we recognize that the more complex it is, you're going to need more than 10 days to do that. So those will be out on the street longer than 10 days. These have public bid openings and potential site visits. So we'll talk a little bit about site visits more in a minute, but public bid opening simply means that when we post something on anything that we post, anything that we advertise, it will tell you what day, what time that the bid will be open. Time is equally important, right? Equally important, because we at that date and at that time, we're going to open the bid. If you choose, it is a public bid opening, so you can come to NCDOT. My team open all bids down in the auditorium that's on the first floor, right? There is another option, right? If you want to come, you're more than welcome. But you also can contact the purchaser that's listed on the solicitation document after the date and time of the bid and ask them to send you the bid opening sheet. They can send you the list of who submitted a bid. As long as we're not anticipating doing any type of negotiations, they will send you the amount of the bid that was submitted. Right? If it's one of the more complex or complicated ones, then chances are we will not provide you with the pricing at that time because we anticipate having to negotiate pricing. So we're going to go into some discussions about costs. And so for that reason, we won't give the cost out at the bid opening for those, but for those for these IFBs, we're going to give you who bid and how much did they bid. So you can come, but you also can email the purchasing specialist that's listed on the document. Their name and contact information, email and phone number is listed there. I will send them an email and say, hey, will you please send me the bid opening sheet for this particular bid? So identify the bid that you want, ask them to email you a copy of the bid and bid opening sheet, and they can do that. RFPs, request for proposal. Now, these are more complex services or a combination of goods and services, and it typically is over $50,000, well over $50,000. These are, we are seeking competition here. That's when we know the division or the business unit or the agency knows the end result, right? We know what we want. We're looking for the best solution to get there. And that's what we want from the vendor, to put together a proposal, a solution for us on how best to get to our end result, right? Then we're also going to have an evaluation method other than lowest cost and expect. So we're not going to be looking at the lowest cost in this case, right? We're going to look at, cost is not going to be the most important thing. It is always important, but it would not be the most important thing in the RFP process. The other evaluation criteria, which has to be listed in the RFP, we have to follow the what we say we're going to do in terms of how we're going to evaluate. That is one of the things my team is charged with managing with the end user, making sure that if these proposals are evaluated the way that we said it would be. The RFPs are also posted again for a minimum of 10 days, but again, the more complex it is, it's probably going to be longer than 10 days. Some are even 15, 20 days, 25 days. It just depends on how complex it is. So you have more time. Public bid openings, again, you're welcome to come, but you can also, after the date and time of the bid opening, email the procurement specialist that's listed on the document and ask for the bid opening sheet, and they will provide that to you. As long as they'll send you the list of who bid. They will include pricing as long as we are not anticipating negotiations. It is more likely that we'll negotiate in RFP situations, but not all the time. So you can always ask, and they'll let you know that at a minimum, they will provide you with the name of the vendors that submitted a bid. And they would let you know whether we are withholding the pricing part because anticipated negotiation. And if we are not, then they will also give you the pricing that the vendor submitted as well. And these as well can have potential site visits, but again, we'll talk about site visits in just one second. Paula? So RFI, request for information, is exactly what it says. Is we're requesting information. We're going to gather that together. We're going to determine whether, what's the level of interest of potential vendors, how much, we're doing a market search, right? A market research thing is really what an RFI is. It's not a solicitation document. We would not make an award on offer as a result of responding to that. There are no terms and conditions that are attached there. We are simply gathering information. And once we are past the response period, we're simply gonna cancel it in IPS or EVP. Paula? So let's just talk about the different sections of the solicitation documents. And In section 101.0 is the purpose and background section. That's where you're going to find out what the agents are going to tell you why they're making the purchase, right? You know, why we're going to invest this money and, you know, the purpose of what we're going to do it for. That's there. In section 2, that's where you see general information. You're going to see the solicitation schedule there. There's a question period with all posted solicitation. So if it's advertised, there's a question period, right? We're going to talk a little bit about that more in a second as well. That's where you also going to find out when you make your bid submission, are you required to send more than one copy, right? Do you have to provide a digital copy? That type of information is in section 2.0. And 3.0, it talks about the method of award and the bid evaluation process. So how are we going to determine who we're going to award to? You know, the specifics of that are in section 3. If there's how we're going to handle confidential information. In section 4, we're going to talk about the requirements, right? What are the terms of the contract? We're going to talk about pricing. We're going to talk about delivery, when we have to have it. If it's a good, is there a warranty involved? And if so, what are we looking for in terms of that? If we want references, then we're going to state that in this section as well. If we're looking for a certain amount of experience from the vendor, that would be in section 4 as well. If we're going to do a background check, we're going to, and we need to do that, we're going to let you know that in section 4 as well. In section 5, that's where you're going to find the scope of work or this product specification. So what is it that what is the objective, right? So what exactly are we looking, and when we are soliciting this document, this process, what are we looking for? What is the specifications are there? We're going to ask you for your technical approach. If it's an RFP, we're going to ask you for how you approach this project, right? And your project organization, we're going to ask you for that. And section 6 is that's the information about the contract administration, right? So we're going to ask you, if you're awarded, who would be that one point of contact for us, name and contact information. Once we will provide that information, so you have a point of contact on your side, NCDOT will have someone on their side. It will be someone other than someone in my office after the award process, because again, we are in the process from the time the need is identified until the award. After award, you will work directly with the end user. In section 6, we are going to talk about if there's a dispute, how are we going to resolve that? If contract changes are needed, how is that going to be managed? Who's responsible for that? And then we have some attachments. That's where you're going to find the pricing forms. You're going to find the terms and conditions there. There's some more supplemental kind of information there. We're asking for financial certification as well. That's a one-pager. I think it's fairly simple, but that's what you'll see in our attachments. Colin. So our documents of change, an addendum. So we post a bid, right? We got it posted out on EBP, and we determine that, we need to change something. It could be something as simple as we're gonna extend the question period, right? Or we're gonna extend, we initially posted it for 10 days. We're now gonna extend it for, 5 more days, right? So we're gonna change the opening date. Or we need to add additional information in the specifications piece of it, right? Or we need to change the delivery, anything once it's posted, right? And we need to make a change on our end. The process that we use to make that change is called an addendum, and it's going to be posted on EBP just like everything else. So when you are notified that, or you look and you see that there is a advertisement or solicitation that you want to be involved with, and you're going to respond to, please continue to keep an eye on that up to the opening date and time, because there may be an addendum that's added that's going to change something. So you need to make sure you don't just look at it one time. You need to go back and look at it. I'll look at it daily personally. Listen, if we have to do more than, you know, 1 or 2, 3, maybe addendums to something, then there's something wrong. And I'm going to require my team to take it back off the market, right? And let's get this right, because it's really, we don't want a document out there that's that flawed. We can make simple things that we can change. That's one thing. But if we have to change too much of the scope of what we have out there advertised, then that means that we got something wrong, right? And so we need to take that back and reissue it with in a better format, right? So that we would do that. So, but I still would check it daily, because you never know. We may change the date. If it's a 10-day posting, we may change the date on day 8, right? So, or we may change it on day 5. You know, it's just, I would just check it, right? It's a simple thing. Just check it. It's a quick check. You can see if the addendum's there, it's listed immediately under the same listing. So you don't have to search the whole page for that. You go back to where your document that you were responding to. If there's an addendum, it's listed immediately under that, right? So that's what an addendum is. A request for clarification. So once we have posted the bid, the bid opening date and time has came and gone. We are now reviewing your bid submission. If there is something that we're not clear on, we're going to send you what we call a request for clarification. We're trying to confirm something. So this is what this reads to us. Is this true? Do you agree? So it's not an opportunity for you to change your bid. You cannot change your bid after the bid date and time opening of, you can't change the bid at that point. If you send in a bid and you recognize before the bid date, opening date and time, and you recognize that you need to, you know, you omitted something or you want to change, then you can still send in a second bid and you can indicate to us, you know, that there's something called an alternate bid, or you can indicate to us that this is your bid and you asked not, you know, the first one to be destroyed or whatever. You can say that to us, but we cannot accept a bid after the bid date and time of opening, right? So you got that time to be able to do that. So even if we posted a bid, you send in your response, then we post an addendum, or we, you know, then you still can come back if you need to, right? So depending upon the severity or the importance of the addendum, some of them we require that you sign and send back in with your response. If you've already sent your response, then you can still sign it and send that in as well. Just the addendum itself is fine. But the request for clarification, that'll come only after the bid date and time of opening. And then it'll come directly to you in an email, because on your bid submission, we're asking you for contact information. And so we're going to use that email and we're going to send you a form. It's really a form. We're going to ask you, generally should be a yes or no question, right? And so we're going to email that to you. So if you have submitted a bid, keep your eye on your email as well, because the communication is going to come that way. A best and final offer, that is used when we are doing negotiations. Typically is used on the request for proposal, the RFP process, and we've evaluated the bid submissions. Say we got 10 bid submissions, we have using the evaluation process, the criteria that we have published, then we have came down to 5 of the top bids, right? Responses, right? And we want to invite those 5 folks to come talk to us around, you know, something specific about their different submissions, right? We're going to ask all 5. They won't come at the same time. They won't know whether they're the only one coming. They won't know if anyone else, and even if, you know, if there are others coming, they'll have no idea. We're only going to talk about your bid to you. We're not going to talk about someone else's bid. We're not going to mention that there's someone else, anything like that. So we're going to tell you specifically what we want you to come and talk to us about. What about your submission that we have questions about, that we want to negotiate? We're going to say that very clearly, set a date and time. Today, technology, they are done virtually. They are also done in person. So typically you're given the option to either come in or do it via virtually. And we require that you have decision-making authority people in the room to be able to, because we're gonna have a negotiation, we're gonna come to an agreement. After that meeting, my office is gonna send you a best and final offer, right? And so it is that is on this document what makes our discussion a legal part of our agreement. Because remember, we have posted a bid, you responded to a bid. So we have a bid submission. We want to add some additional information or make some changes to that. And the way that we're doing that is through a negotiation. It's called best and final offer. So we're going to take your original submission along with the best and final offer. That becomes our contract. And there's language in the best and final offer document that says that everything that it's not verbatim. Basically, what it's saying is that everything that you are certifying in the best and final offer also includes your original submission. So the two documents together becomes the contract. So again, we only use the best and final when we're negotiating. We don't always do that. So always provide your best response initially, because we're not required to do negotiations. And again, we typically only do it when we're doing those RFPs where we're looking for solutions and that sort of thing. An amendment. So an amendment is used when after the contract has been awarded and there's changes needed. It could be a simple change. We're going to extend the contract, right? That's a contract extension. That's an amendment, right? So any change that's made to the contract, if we're going to change a milestone, if we have agreed on certain dates that certain things are going to be done, if we want to change that, both parties, NCDOT, in my case, I work for NCDOT, but the state and the vendor have to agree on what that change is. And when we're going to do an amendment, that's going to talk specifically about what the change is, what's different in the document, and both the state and the vendor will sign that and becomes an official part of the contract process. Paula. Submitting a bid or proposal, please pay a particular attention to the language that's there. Shall, must, mandatory, those words are going to elicit a particular response from the my office, right? So if it says shall, a must, and you don't do it, then you are not qualified. You just disqualified yourself. So make sure you pay attention to the language. The box there in the center is it's a photo of what is on the solicitation document. That is where you sign. You're signing your signature saying the information that you provided is true. You understand it. And you agreeing to the document. You're agreeing to all the terms and conditions that are there. Please make sure that you sign it, right? If we receive an offer that's not signed, it's not a legal offer. We can't do anything with it. There is one exception, and that's when you're talking about RFPs. I would not stake my life on that if I were you, but I have known in my career where in the RFP is a more formal process, right? It's a more formal. So if it's an RFP, it's a more formal. If it's an RFQ, if it's an IFB, they're less formal, right? We're not going to ask you to add additional. Probably we're not going to have a need to add additional paper with it, right? With the RFQ and the IFB. If we're talking about an RFP, that's a more formal and more complex. You probably going to have to put some more data on some other sheets and send that in with your offer, right? And one of the things we're going to ask you to do is identify who you are, your company, who are your associates that's going to be working on our account. Please just say for us that you read and understand it, blah, blah, blah. And so you're going to give us like a introductory sheet, right? And in that sheet, I have heard it argued legally that the fact that they provided that sheet, signed and dated that sheet, then that makes their submission legal offer because they signed that sheet, even if they didn't sign this box. But so that is only in a RFP situation. I do mention it because I have heard it once in my career, right? But what I say to you is sign this box. Sign this box. But otherwise, we don't have a legal offer. We can't do anything with it. We're going to set it aside. Not even look at it. Paula. solicitation schedule. So in that solicitation document that's posted, right? So the IFB, the RP, you're gonna see a little box that looks like this. It may not have like the last two lines there, the contract award, contract effective date. Those are optional. Some people include it, some don't. But you will know the solicitation, the issue solicitation, that's the date that we posted it, right? The whole pre-bid meeting or site visit, if that's required, then the date and time would be listed there, for that. Submit written questions, the date and time that we have to have them by will be listed in that line. Provide response to questions. That line may or may not be there. It is the target date that they want to have the bid responses, the submitted questions, the response to those. That's the date that they are targeting to get the response back out. And so again, remember, something is posted. If you want to add or change anything that's in there, is done on an addendum, right? So there will be an addendum posted that has the answers to any written questions that we receive. So that's another reason for an addendum. That's another reason why you want to go back out and continue to check that until the posting, opening, and the opening date and time, right? Because an addendum will be posted. It may even be one that provides the responses we receive in the questions. It provides the responses to that. And then the bid submission date, that is the absolute, no exceptions, time in which the date and time in which your bid have to be in my office, right? A minute after that, we're not taking it. If you show up with it, you insist upon leaving it, you can leave it. But I'm telling you, we're not gonna do anything with it. We're not gonna open it. We're gonna mark it as late. One of the things, we have a timer. And so those things are used, and we're gonna put that on your thing, and we're not gonna open it. We just can't. That's the one thing that is non-negotiable, right? There's some other things, but that's the one thing that's really non-negotiable. We would not open a late bid. And that's the same even if you do it electronically after the date and time there's a clock that ticks down. After then, you cannot submit it. So it's important that you understand the opening date and time, and that you submit your bid prior to that. Caller. Vendor questions. So I kind of mentioned it before. This is the window of time that you have to, after you have reviewed the bid that's posted, right? That you have some questions around anything that's in the bid. This is your opportunity to provide the written questions. So if you see in the little box there, the information, the contact information, the email address for the person on my team, the procurement specialist, will be provided there. You will email your question to that person that's identified in the solicitation document. Submit your questions in writing. Please don't pick up the phone. Their phone number is going to be listed somewhere on that document on the first page as well. Don't pick up the phone and call them with a question that you want to be binding on this date, right? So if you call them, and if they answer over the phone, which they should not, but if they do, whatever they tell you, it means nothing, right? You send your question in writing. We will provide a response in writing. That addendum, remember anything that we post, that becomes a part of the contract. That's a legal binding on the state. So if you want to hold us accountable for what we say, then you send your question in writing. We're going to respond in writing, and that makes it legal, right? You call us on the phone, we answer whatever we answer. That means nothing legally. Okay. I'm not suggesting that my team or anyone would give you bad information. I'm just saying it's not legally binding unless it's in writing, right? And I actually advise them not to even answer questions over the phone for that reason. For that reason. That's it. there's a date and time. Remember, we talked about the list schedule. It'll tell you what's the date and the time that you got to have your questions. And so we adhere to those times as well. Carla, please. We kind of talked about site visit, just kind of mention it. So again, for this posted solicitations, if there's a site visit, which is, if we think it's necessary for the vendor to physically see the location to gather additional information to be able to provide a responsible proposal or a bid submission, then we are going to arrange a site visit. And it's going to either be a mandatory site visit or it's going to be urged and cautioned. If it's mandatory, then if you want us to evaluate your bid, then you have to be at that bid, that site visit, right? We're going to take attendance. We are going to, late vendors, we are not going to allow you to sign in. It is as if you're not there. So it's important to be on time. It's important to make sure you sign in, and it's important that you stay for the duration of the site visit, right? If it's mandatory, if you do not come, if you do not sign in, if you leave early, then you are good as not there, and we will not consider your bid. If it's urged and cautioned, we are advising you to come. It's up to you to come or not. We will have the site visit. If you come, sign in, that's wonderful. We're gonna, you submit a bid, we will evaluate it. If you decide you don't need to come and don't come, then that's fine. You submit a bid, we will evaluate it. So, but we're suggesting that you come, but you don't have to on the urgent caution. If it says mandatory, please be there on time and stay the entire time, or we will not evaluate your bid. Paula. Submittal instructions, please pay special attention to that. We are now doing electronic bid submissions as well. When the bid is posted, it will tell you by what means that you can submit your responses to. Paula. Vendor requirements, this is really just, that's the specification the vendor must meet or submit with this proposal. So pay attention to that. The information is provided in the solicitation documents. Typically they're yes or no, right? And it's not evaluated. You either have it or you don't. So there's nothing to evaluate. It's a yes or no. Like for instance, we have some examples there, like the product has to be delivered within 15 consecutive calendar days, right? And typically under that, when that sentence is in a solicitation document, immediately under there's a line in which it's asking you, and then there's a line, and then it says days, like how many days can you, asking you to write in, how many days can you that you need in order to deliver the product. If it says above it that it must be delivered within 15 consecutive calendar days, and then below it asks you to put how many days you need. If you put 20 days, you don't meet the requirement because we said it must be delivered within 15. Just know that, right? It'll tell you whether you have to have a general contractor's license, right? If you have it, then we're going to evaluate what you send us. If you do not, then it is a what we call non-responsive bid, meaning it doesn't meet the requirements. If we ask for references, you don't provide them, it's not a responsive bid. Okay, Carla. Evaluation criteria. This is what we're going to use. It's the how. And it tells us what the state is going to be evaluating when we do a competitive bid, and it's something other than low cost meet spec, right? If it's low cost meet spec, that's generally saying that you got this specific product, the quantity that we needed, the date that we needed delivered, you can meet all that. The only difference between your bid submission and someone else's is the price. So that's when we do low cost meets spec, and that's it. And that's on when it's in the best interest of the state. When we think there's some value, that we look at some other criteria other than cost. Cost is important, but something other than cost as well. Then we're going to do an evaluation, and we're going to indicate in the solicitation what criteria we're going to use to evaluate. Some examples that are listed there are vendor experience. We're going to look at your relative past experience, right? Experience that you have that is similar to what we're asking for. So it has to be relative. Staffing plan, we may ask you how you plan on, depending upon what it is, obviously. We may need a staffing plan, like how many people do you have? What are their resumes, right? What are their skill base, and what are their experience at doing this? Your technical approach, how are you going to meet this? How are you going to bring about this solution, this end result that we've indicated that we want? What way are you going to do that? And so those are some examples of the evaluation criteria. Paula, are there any questions?
We are at our question period, and the only question I see not answered in the chat, if we are not able to provide anything that the bid is asking for, how can we do part of the bid? And how can we find and sub for the larger companies who will be bidding?
So that's where networking comes in. You cannot submit, in some cases, depending upon what it is, right? So for instance, if I have a solicitation, IFB, right, and I'm looking for let's say 10 gadgets, whatever they are, right? 10 different gadgets. We can't supply all 10. The ones that you can and you want to bid on, you can bid on those. They will indicate in the solicitation document whether you have to bid on all or some, right? And there are instances where it also going to give the state the right to, or the option to be able to award by line item, right? So those are all things that would be taken in consideration, right? So, but that's more when it's a good and it's identified, well-defined need has been identified. If we're looking more at the proposal kinds of things where we're looking for solutions, then that's more of you will need to know who's also in that field, and the two of you come together and determine who's gonna be able to provide which part of that and that. So I don't know that we have a marrying technique. I think that's what you're asking for. How can you find out who else you can work with? You're going to have to do some networking as well previous to something like that coming up. So I will be knowing right now, attend some of the outreach events that are occurring both at NCDOT as well as the hub office have several that they participate or facilitate as well. So I would be attending those and making sure that I understand who's in my field and who's doing that work and who's interested in being able to work together to have a better opportunity to meet some of these bid requirements.
Do all bids allow the opportunity to submit alternative options, such as instances when you have multiple items that might meet criteria? And does that require a separate bid to be submitted, or can you put alternatives in the same bid?
So that really depends, but some bids will say specifically that it has to be this specification or equivalent, right? And then it'll give you a line where you can write in the item that you believe meets is the same quality of the example that was that was listed there. It would say I want I don't know copier HP 3754 or equivalent. So you write in another copier vendor and their number. But what you want to make sure is that whatever copier you write in, it has the same qualities, same specifications that the one that they indicated, because they're looking for that. It doesn't have to be HP 5-6, right? It could be someone else, but it has to be able to do those same qualities. So it would say that in some bids, it would say this or equivalent. You also, again, as I stated earlier, you can submit a bid, and then you can also submit an alternate bid, right? So that is possible. If they were not accepting alternate bids, they would say that.
All right. And then the last question, Janice wants to know, how can we find out about events to meet other business owners? And so that same email that you have registered in EVP, where you receive solicitations, we, the Hub office, also communicate with you at that email, and we send out notices for networking opportunities and opportunities with our partners. And so you'll get emails at that same email address. You can also go to our website where we have an events portal where you will find events listed there and trainings listed there also. And we'll put a link to the events page in the chat. So Joni, that was our last question, and
All right, let's move on.
proceed.
Okay, thank you, Carla.
Welcome.
So in this section, we're going to talk about direct submittal. We're going to talk a little bit about the e-procurement collaborative tool, as well as the EVP solicitation search and response. Carla, please. There are different ways or options to submit your proposal or your bid submission. You can do a direct submittal over email, and those are really done using RFQ, or that IRQ response must be current, so it's less than 30 days, right? This is a really quick turnaround process that we use these for smaller dollar items, simpler, they're well-defined products. And so again, please make sure your contact information is current and accurate. There's also the e-procurement collaborative tool that's within there that's used. Then we have the EVP. We also do by mail, right? We still do the submitted by mail. Here's the address, send it to this address. We also have the sourcing tool that we use in e-procurement as well. So you have different even virtual or electronic, ways of submitting your bids proposal. So it's important that you read your document so that you know which avenue that the procurement specialist is accepting responses, because they're not all necessarily the same way. Carla? So in this talking about the collaborative space, it's an informal quoting and pricing request function that is used to obtain quotes for goods and services from multiple vendors at the same time. It's typically up to $50,000, and we are asking that you agree to North Carolina state terms and conditions. Paula? Then the search and response is used to post formal, like the IFB and the RFP solicitations. They're a little more definitive in terms of what we're looking for. And it allows the state agencies to be able to advertise. We are seeking open and fair competition. That's the reason why we advertise, right? That's why we do competitive bids. It also allows us to be able to post our bid tabulations there. So that's also a way, you either can attend the bid opening, or you can email the procurement specialist and request for the bid opening. But you also can, again, keep your eye on the posting, and because the bid tabulation will, within, I think, usually 3 business days or something to that effect, really close to that, that the procurement specialist will also post the tabulation, so you can see it there as well. And again, that is after the bid date and time, right, of the opening. And we also will be posting contract award information there once the contract has been awarded. For the vendor, this allows you to be able to, again, market your goods and services, right? This is a 24/7 opportunity for you. It's a free registration, and it allows you to be able to go in to view and both tabulation and award information. Paula? So this is just really a screenshot of the EVP. It will publicly display the all solicitations that's posted within. Of course, you need to have your required login access to be able to see that. For vendors to respond to a posting, you need to log in, but that's when you need to log in. You can see it. If you look at the top right, there's the sign in there where you would click that to sign in, and then over on your left-hand side, that's search and respond to solicitations. So you can browse there if you want to just see, you can click that and see browse the solicitations that are posted. So this is just really a screenshot of that. So Carla, this example of the solicitation page itself, just so you can see what it would, if you clicked on it, what it would look like. Then Carla, the next page is also an example. If you click there on that where it says response to solicitation, that's where you are, you will click there when you're ready to respond, and it'll give you access to the sourcing tool event that allows you to be able to do that in EVP. Paula? The sourcing, it provides it's a link into the e-procurement there. You need to be registered. Is you have a username and password is required to do that. And there's a link there if you or that you can copy and paste or into and be able to get additional training if you need that. Paula? This next one is an example of a sourcing event page. It's a lot going on there, but if you let's start from the left-hand side. So that checklist of steps to take in the content section. So there is a checklist there on the left-hand side there. If you can click on there and be able to get additional contact information there. In the middle there where it says review prerequisite, that's where you would click to accept the bidder agreement and continue the process of submitting a bid. So if there's any prerequisites that are required for this, some acknowledgments from you, that's where you will see that. And then if you look at the top right-hand corner, there's a countdown clock that's there, right? Remember I said you need to have your submission. There's a date and time in which you have to have it in. So you're going to have that clock that's going to count that down for you, and it'll let you know how much time is remaining in order to submit a response. Carla, are there any questions?
Do not see additional questions in the chat. Does anyone have a burning question they want to unmute and ask? Not, we can go forward.
Okay. So this next section, we will be covering the evaluation process. Specifically, we're going to talk about bid openings. We're going to talk about the evaluation methods, the reference checks, what is Executive Order 50, and then a little bit about clarifications and that BAFO, the best and final offer. That's what BAFO stands for. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Carla? So the bid and proposal, the opening, that's really a part of the formal bid process. It's publicly open. The date and time and location is specified in the solicitation document. So that's there. Again, I cannot tell you enough. Late bids and proposals are not accepted. We will not open them. And attendance, is taking that bid openings. If you come, then we are going to ask you to sign in, right? It's acknowledging who was there in the room when the bid was opening. So if you're in the room, we're going to ask you to sign in. Again, you can ask the it says purchasing agent, which is the same. I call them procurement specialist, more updated term. You can ask them after the bid date and time of opening to provide you with that, and they will do that. Remember, except for if we for non-IT items, if we think that we're going to go into negotiation, they will not give you pricing. But then for just so you know, for IT purchases, they're not going to give you pricing, even if they're not going to do negotiation. They will give you the name of who submitted, but that's all they will give. On the non-IT side, we will give you the pricing as long as we don't anticipate going into negotiations. Next caller, the evaluation methods. So there's really 3 that is used at the state level. Lowest cost method is often called low cost meets spec. That's what we call it. It meets that means that it meets your submission meets all the requirements. It is the lowest cost to the agency, and that's who we award to, right? Pretty simple with regard to that. That best value weighted method. The weights are added up to, so there's different components that have to have different weights, right? Maybe it's the technical is going to weigh something. The cost is going to weigh something. If they're doing evaluations, that's going to weigh something. But all the weights will add up to be 100, and they have to indicate in the solicitation document what they're going to weigh, right? What is the criteria and how much weight would it have? It'll tell you that, and it'll also tell you if they're talking about, they're asking you for a technical approach, they're going to tell you, give you some language, right, as to what they're looking for in that and what they're going to be evaluating. And then lastly, the best value narrative method. That is a written account of the merit of the proposal. So they really gonna is usually evaluated using the terms strengths and weaknesses. So they're going to look at a proposal. This is what the requirements were for the proposal or for the IFB, if that's what it is. And then they're gonna evaluate what you submitted against that specification. So what is the strength, right? So a strength is that component that what enhances the potential of success. So is there a strength? Is there a chance of being successful with this proposed solution, right? And then it's a weakness, right? They're going to be looking at what's the risk, right? Is there a flaw that increases the risk of it being unsuccessful? So that's what they're looking at. I personally prefer the narrative, the last method, because I think it makes it a little bit more clear than the weighted. Remember I told you on the weighted one, they're going to score, they're going to give you how much each section is going to weigh, right? And it has to, all the sections together have to add up to 100. But it's a little hard to try to explain to someone why you scored them let's say 80, and scored someone else 81, right? It's just really hard to differentiate that. I think it's a little bit more conversational and my opinion, objective if you can do the narrative method, because then we're going to talk about the specifics of what makes your proposal what's the strength of it, and we're also going to be able to talk with specifics about what the weakness we saw when we evaluated that. So, Paula. So the reference checks, it can be used to confirm that the vendor had performed the service or offered the product of the same size and scope that we are asking for. It can be added, the reference section can be added to solicitation documents. They're not always, so please check and see if they're asking that you provide one. And it also, please look and see what is the requirement, right? It shall provide or should provide. It's just, if it says shall or must, then please make sure you include that with it. Please know that we either gonna call every bid submission reference or we will call no references. So if we get 5 bids responses, we either gonna call all bid references or we're not gonna call anyone. So we're not gonna pick vendor 1 and 3, and then we not, those are the only ones we're gonna call. No, we're gonna call all vendors, all references or none, and we're gonna ask the same questions to all of them, right? That is what we're doing. So we wanna, again, transparency, fair. We wanna make sure we're doing that. We're gonna have a standard across the board. All submissions in terms of references will be handled the same way. Carla? Clarification and baffles, talked a little bit about both of those. So again, the request for clarification is sent to the vendor to confirm some information when we're doing the evaluation stage, right? It's usually a yes or no. Remember, I said it's a yes or no. It provides clarification for something that's unclear, that we think is unclear. We just want to make sure we are seeing or reading it or understanding it correctly. It's not an opportunity for you to provide additional information. So it's a yes or no. And you also are not allowed to change your or alter your proposed pricing. It's not an opportunity to do that either. And then the best and final offer, the BAFO, we use that for negotiations. It does allow you to alter your proposal, right? So typically, these are done only in the request for proposal, the RFP process. So it does allow you to alter your proposal and the best and final offer, obviously. But please understand that state doesn't have to negotiate. So please always offer your best initially, right? You want to be attractive to stay in the process. And if we send you a best and final offer, you are we're asking that you complete that, because we would have had negotiation discussions with you and notified you that we're going to send this best and final offer and ask that you complete it within the specified time. Paula? Then Executive Order 50 is that price matching piece that offers the price matching opportunity for North Carolina-based headquartered in North Carolina vendors, right? You must indicate when you submit your bid that you want the opportunity to price match, right? The vendor, you got to complete the attachment that's in the solicitation. It must be notarized. Please pay attention to that. And this opportunity is given when the North Carolina vendor's pricing is within 5% or $10,000 of the non-resident vendor. So if we have a low cost me spec, we have 5 vendors. Let's say one of them was from a out of state vendor and they actually had the lowest price. If we had a North Carolina vendor that was within 5% or $10,000 of that non-North Carolina vendor, then and that you indicated when you submitted your bid that you want the opportunity to price match, then we will give you the opportunity. But if you have not, you have to submit that up when you submit your bid, right? You can't do it after the fact. I would, Carla, are there any questions?
There is one question seeking clarity, and the question is, the EVP is to review the solicitations and e-procurement is where the actual bids are submitted? And that's a question.
No, it's in EVP. So that's where you would do all your work, your submission at.
And that was the only question not answered in the chat. And so if someone has, again, a question that they want to ask, you can unmute and ask that question. If not, we will proceed.
Okay.
There you go, Joni.
Thank you. So in this session, we're going to talk about the award notification process, and we're going to talk about purchase orders and invoices to a very quick extent. Carla? So the award notification, the agency, the purchasing office, my office is going to send out it's called a certification of award memo to the vendor that wins. And so we congratulating you. It's your notifications. We're also going to attach that award notification to the purchase order that will be issued for it. And we are going to post it in EVP within 3 days. That's our goal. And it will be posted for at least 30 days. Not really sure how long EVP, but I know it's at least 30 days. Once the contract award is received, then at that point, again, my office, once we have awarded it, my office will and notify you of the award and posted all the requirements that we need to about the award. Then my office will be moved outside of the process and you will work directly with the end user, right? Paula? So purchase orders, it's just some information that's included, but it's not really limited. It talks about the description, obviously, of the items or the service that was purchased. It's gonna also talk about delivery schedule. It's gonna be indicated up there what are the payment terms are. Terms and conditions will also be attached to the purchase order, as well as there's any comments to the vendor. Typically, that's not, or they're pretty common ones. But these are some of the things that you can see on an actual purchase order. Carla? For invoicing, it includes things like the item description or the service that was completed, the purchase order or the contract number. Please know that sometimes those two numbers are the same. The purchase order and the contract number, they use it interchangeably. They are the same in many cases. This remit to, of course, that is who and where the payment is going to be sent. Please make sure that that's current. Typically, the state pays in net 30 days terms. And for NCDOT, we do check writes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We also have the ability now to do electronic payments. So if that's something that will work for you and you're interested in, please check out that link there, and it can happen at NCDOT. Paula, are there any questions?
There are no questions in the chat, but what I was saying is I was quickly going to go back to the slide that talked about how long awards are posted in EVP, and now instead of 30 days, it's indefinitely. So they're posted.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay, good, cool.
Yep. And so if there are any questions and you want to unmute, you can do so at this time. And if not, then we will proceed.
Okay, we're in the last stretch. So lastly, we're going to talk about contract management, inspection, and testing. We're going to talk about renewals and amendments, vendor protests, what are those and who gets to do that, and how does that process work? And we're going to talk about public records requests as well. Paula? So a contract kickoff meeting, that's where, that's really about contract management. So again, my office is going to be involved from the beginning of the procurement into the actual award of it and the notification of the award to the appropriate bodies. Once that happens, then we're going to move out of the process, as I stated, and you, the vendor, will talk directly with the end user. That division or that business unit inside of, in my case, NCDOT, that you're going to provide in this service or these goods directly to. And they're typically going to have what they call a contract kickoff meeting. That's where you, the vendor, and the end user are going to get together, and they're going to talk about, you just going to really clarify the terms and conditions. These things has already been agreed upon. We're just going to, put people face to face, get to know who you're going to be working with directly, and not just, you have probably been in contact with the procurement office, but you have not had an opportunity to meet the end user. So this gives that opportunity for the face to face between the vendor and the end user. We're going to clarify any goals. We're going to communicate roles and responsibilities. Those things have been clearly identified in the procurement process, but we're going to talk about it for the first time face to face as a vendor and as the end user. And then we also, they could also as well clarify any delivery expectations at that meeting. Paula. Inspection and testing. We're gonna let the vendor know if we receive any damaged goods or if there's some inaccurate order that we received. We ordered 5 and we received 1. We ordered 5 and we received 10. So we're gonna let you know. And of course, if we haven't received it and we're past the delivery date, then we will be in touch about that as well. And then with regard to quality acceptance, if there's some inspection or delivery or installment requirements, then we're not going to pay the invoice until that inspection of those goods are accepted, right? So delivery is not considered to have occurred until the installation has been completed and any disposal of waste or debris from the site that's required, and that has been done as well. For vendor complaints, inspections and complaints are documented by the contract administrator. They really should be working directly with you if there is a question or a complaint, right? One, to give you an opportunity to address what their concerns are or is, and then also in a time, to make that correction. And so then if the two of you, the end user and the contractor cannot, then my office will get involved, and it'll become more of a formal process at that point. So we're hoping that we won't get to that hopefully there won't be any issues, but if there are, that you're able to speak directly the end user and the vendor together and resolve that, and we can all move on successfully. Paula. In terms of renewals, as I stated earlier, the standard contract term is 3 years. You remember, typically I said they are 1 year with 2 1-year renewable options to them. So that contract year and the 2 optional years makes it 3-year contract, or the state has an opportunity to make it into a 3-year contract simply by renewing it each year for 2 years, right? If it's more than 3 years, we have to get prior approval to that. Renewals are options. They don't have to be exercised. You are doing a great job providing what we need when we need it. Chances are they're going to want to, the end user is going to want to renew because it works for them, right? Everything is working. So why try to change the story, right? So typically, and that's just being straightforward, was what they want to do. If there's a renewal is going to happen, then we certainly going to notify the vendor prior to that. We would generate a new purchase order for each year that the contract is renewed. For the amendments, again, remember that's any change to the contract once it has been awarded. If there's any change, regardless of the reason, whether scope, contract term, cost, or whatever, my office have to be involved. We're the only one that can do an amendment. So the end user and you cannot agree to change the contract. My office have to be involved, and we will manage that process till we get the amendment signed, and then we back out of the process, and the end user and the vendor will work again together to towards whatever the agreement and the amendments are. Paula. A vendor protest. So you have the opportunity, if you disagree, once we posted our award notification and you disagree that we have done what we said we was going to do in the way that we said we was going to do, and so you have an opportunity to submit a written request to me for NCDOT or the purchasing director for awards up to $50,000. If it's more than that, it should go to, for non-IT items, it will go to Division of Purchasing Contracts, which is David O'Neill, who is the current state purchasing officer. What he's going to do is shift it back down to me, and if it's NCDOT, and then give me an opportunity to take a look at what, you written, right? You said that we said that we was going to do A, B, and C. We actually did D, E, and F. And here's the details on why, you think that is fair. What what is your suggested remedy or what? So it will be reviewed, and a determination is going to be made as to whether there's any merit to what you submitted. So my job is to take a look at what my team did, and did we follow the rules? Did we do what we said we was going to do? Can we justify, right? Is our documentation there to justify the award the way that we did it? And again, it is not that we did something different. We have to do what we said we was going to do in a solicitation document. You must submit, if you want to do a protest, you must submit it within 30 consecutive calendar days from the date of the contract award, right? And it cannot be vague. You have to say specifically the reason and any supporting documentation you have to you have to give us something specific to look at and supporting documentation, and then we are obligated, right? I want to make sure I'm committed to this, right? So I want to make sure my team does the right thing for the right reasons and at the right time. So if that didn't occur, I want to know about it, right? And then we're going to take a look at it and see, did we do a misstep, right? And if we did, then we're going to address that. If we did not, we're going to tell you why we don't, we don't think that we did. And so Paula, public records requests. I think this is in some cases a very good tool for vendors that are wanting to get into business with the state, particularly if you're not real sure on, how all these, you got, I just kind of threw a lot of kind of different solicitation documents at you. You've never used it. If you look at one of them, they, I don't know, 30, 40 pages, and it seems like a lot, but it really isn't that complicated. I know it looks like that, but I know I've been doing it for years, so it doesn't look like that to me. But one of the things that we have, not just DOT, but state government, is this public record request. You're able to submit a public records request for awarded contracts, right? So if you are in janitorial, this is just the easiest one, right? If you want to provide janitorial services, you want to get some idea of, the last award that was awarded, and, what did that look like? What did they submit? What documents was there? What was the requirements that was in it? Then I would submit to NCDOT a public records request for the last janitorial contract that was awarded to this location, right? And then as long as we have awarded it and it has no confidential information, even if it has confidential, we would take that piece out and provide you with the rest of the non-confidential information that's there. So it's a good way to get information. If to maybe help you, give you something to look at. If you're just a little unsure about, how this process, what it looks like, what these documents look like, how they're filled out. It's just one way of doing that. But you have the right, again, for any information, for any procurement that's awarded, to request make a public records request. You need to find out from each agency, handle them a little differently. For NCDOT, they have to be sent through our communications office, and then the communication folks will send it to me. If it's a general statute, it's something my office processed, then if it's a purchasing, they will send it to me. I gather the information that's asked for from my team, right? And then I send information back to communications, then communications will send it to you or whoever requested it, right? Each agency may do it a little differently. When I was with Department of Public Instruction, they came directly to me. I filled them out. I provided it and just worked directly with the end user. So agencies chooses to do those things differently sometimes. So here at NCDOT, they all must go through communications, and then they'll send it to me if it's a purchasing one, and I'll get them the information and go back. So it includes as much information as possible, because we do thousands of awards. So if you want to make sure you get the information that you're looking for, include as much information as possible. Like if there's a title, do you have a contract number, right? A contract name. Generally, when we post bids, there is the number that's there is the requisition number, and you have someone's initial. It's gonna say 54 dash something, right? And then dash. It's gonna have 54 dash someone's initial, along with a number, a set of numbers, and those numbers are really our requisition number, which is, it doesn't really matter to you, but if you can provide that, then that gives us, it gives me something to go by to know what you're asking for. Because if you just ask me for a janitorial contract, I do a whole lot. Which one do you want? So I'm going to ask communications to go back to you and ask you which one are you looking for, right? So as much information if you can provide that helps us to be able to get you the information that you are asking for. And note on the price and information and current vendor on current or past contracts will be released while a contract is out for bid, right? Next column, please. Thank you. These are some quick website references, links for you. Again, you're going to receive this information from Carla. And so these are some quick links for you to be able to utilize. Are there any questions, Carla? I've completed.
All right. And I am checking to see if we have any questions in the chat. We have dropped a link to a survey in the chat. If you would respond to our survey, and we'll also email the link to the survey. Regarding questions, I do not see any additional questions in the chat, but you definitely can unmute to ask any question you may have. I will say there is a question in the chat that says, did the Department of Transportation reach its hub goals for 2023?
So we are still waiting on the hold on one second. Let me see, Carla. I had that information. Well, like I just said, we didn't get 10%. We got really close to that. Let me just say that. We got close to that. Probably closer than we have been in previous years. But we're still working at it, and we determined we're going to get to that 10%. So.
All right. Any other questions? Do feel free to unmute and ask your questions. So if no questions, that ends our presentation